With the metal framing getting powder coated, I want to jump in and start working on the drawer boxes. For them, I want to do finger joints on all the sides to make them nice and strong. And to do that on the CNC table, I've been using these really small 1/8 inch end mills, which I was a little skeptical about first because they're so small and they look fragile. And I did break a couple getting started, but I think I got it dialed in now. I got the right speed. And they work really nice for getting in tight to the corners, and they don't remove much material, so they just work really good for this. Got one more sheet to go here, and then I can start building the boxes.
It was a fun challenge figuring out how to make all the finger joints work on the sides and the bottom. I might do a video just focused on it at some point. I used dog bone fillets on the inside corners in order for the pieces to fully lock into each other. They're really small, and I think you'll barely see them when the sides are put together. Removing the fillet is the chirp you hear on the inside corners. Another thing that took me a while to get dialed in is the right tolerance for a good fit. I did some test pieces and I had some that were too tight and some that were too loose, until I found the happy medium. I know I'll be dropping heavy hammers and grinders and stuff into the drawers as I use the workbench, which is why I wanted to have strong joints on all the sides and hopefully prevent the bottom from getting knocked out. It's kind of hard getting the bottom piece started, but once I did, it was nice how it really squared everything up and made it really strong. I sanded everything down nice and smooth, which removed the top veneer in the plywood in places, but I don't know, I kind of like the look of it for this application. I applied 3 coats of polyurethane with the airless sprayer, which I needed to turn down quite a bit to prevent runs.
I got the frame back from powder coating, which is always really exciting for me. I just love how it feels. Before I move it against the wall, I got to put a couple pieces of wood in on the back side, and I think once I get that done, I'm going to go ahead and move it over and get it anchored down to the concrete.
It's just these 2 end pieces inside the doors of the cabinet that I wanted to fasten from the back side so the screw holes would be hidden. With the frame bolted down, I can start reinstalling the finished panels. I cut a piece of plywood for the toolbox to sit on.
I think I'm ready to start mounting the drawers. Bought some heavy duty drawer rollers. Seem really nice. And I think what I'm going to do is use the laser level here to draw a line side to side across the drawer, and then pre-drill everything and get these attached and see how it goes.
know my cheap laser level isn't perfect, but I think it's gonna be better than anything else I do, especially just using like a level or some other way to transfer the line side to side. After doing some measuring, I know that the first one needs to be at 2.5 inches, so I'll go ahead and drill that out and mount it there, and then drill and screw in the last ones with the roller in place. All the drawers slide really well, except for this set right here. And I was fighting them like crazy, and I started measuring, and I don't know what I did, but the back side of the cabinet is 1/2 inch wider than the front. It's really sloppy. Screwed up on it somehow. But yeah, it's enough to make it bind as it comes in, and it wasn't closing. So I think what I have to do is shim out one side of the rollers to make it square and perpendicular so the drawers can slide in and out. I cut this piece of wood. This is the narrowest dimension, and it helps me, I think, figure out which side needs to go which way. Yeah, so it looks like this one over here needs to come out that much right there. That's better. Now that all the drawers were installed and sliding like they should, I think it's time to move on to the Benchtop. But before I jump on that, I want to tell you about the sponsor of this video, Skillshare. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives, with thousands of classes led by industry experts across film, illustration, design, freelance, productivity, and many other subjects. One of the ways I personally love to use Skillshare is when I'm wanting to learn a new skill, like when I wanted to learn video editing, for example, and I was a little lost as to which direction to go with the different software options. I could watch a few classes on Adobe Premiere and a few classes on Final Cut Pro to get an idea of the workflow and how they might differ before I committed to doing a deep dive into learning one, which I knew could save me a ton of time. Skillshare has classes on all the software I use, from graphic design to 3D modeling and even CNC programming. And that's just a small sliver specific to what I do. You'll find classes on much broader subjects like art, writing, and personal development. The first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, which is the perfect way to explore what Skillshare has to offer. I really want to thank Skillshare for their longtime support of this channel, and I hope you'll check them out. Thanks, Skillshare. With the drawers installed, I moved on to the Workbench top, which I'm going to make out of 4x6 beams glued together. To joint them, I set them all upright on the CNC table and surface them. And then one by one, I could flip them over and run them through the benchtop planer to do the opposite side. Then I glued them all together. It's getting pretty heavy at this point, so I used the hoist to lift one side at a time to remove the clamps and set it back down on the spoil board before surfacing the top and the bottom flat. For removing larger amounts of material, I used a 1/2-inch end mill, but for the finishing pass, I used a 2-inch wide surfacing bit. It's left a lot nicer finish, but it's really limited on the amount that it will remove. I was only doing 20 thousandths of an inch for a pass depth, or it would start getting bogged down pretty easily. I also had to split the surfacing into 2 sections, since the beams are 2 feet longer than the CNC table is. So I surfaced one area down, and then slid the wood to the other end of the table to finish the bottom half. All right, I got all the drawers installed, and the 2 halves of the bench top has been surfaced, and it's ready too. So I think I'm gonna start trimming the bench top to match the wall in the back. It's gonna be really hard because the wall's kind of all over the place, and I gotta notch out around the beams, and it's gotta be a pretty tight fit. I have a little bit of a tolerance with to make up with whatever I put on the walls, but I still gotta match the shape pretty closely. And I think my best chance of doing that is using some cardstock, heavy paper here, and cutting out a template, and then I'll transfer it over to the bench top and cut it out from there. Starting to second guess this method. I got it all notched out, but there's just too much play in it, and I don't know how accurate it's going to be. Might have to change directions here. So I tried transferring the lines from the beam and the edge of the wall directly onto the board, but I'm still struggling with it because I'm not sure how to cut it. It's 3 inches thick, so I can't use a circular saw, and I think a sawzall is going to be pretty sloppy. I'm not quite sure which direction to go. I think I might call him a pro and see if he can give me a hand with this. I have like a 1/2 inch overhang on the front, and then the back wall's crooked and all over the place.
Oh, nice.
I gotta trim it, trying to match that, and then I got the 2 beams I gotta notch around.
Nice. You got another one of these scope over here?
Yeah, And we do have a little bit of a margin because the wallings will be probably like 3/4 of an inch or something. I'm gonna put that over the top.
Oh, you are putting something over that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jason's a really handy neighbor to have. He suggested using a track saw to cut through the top half, and then flipping the top over and using a flush trim router bit to clean up the bottom. There were a couple other kids that just screamed the entire way, and it really makes you appreciate it.
So a little spot there, but I think it's fine because it's on the bottom, yeah?
Yeah. You're not camera shy, are you?
I hope not.
He thought it'd be best to make a template with some thin plywood to match the shape of the beams, which would guide a router bit. I thought this was a cool method because you can check the fit of the template against the beam to see how it'll look before you cut into the workbench. This is the underside, and with it cut, we flipped it over, and Jason used the same flush trim router bit from the top side to match the shape of the template.
See that with your camera?
Got a nice flush shot. we gave the second side the same treatment. You doing it by yourself?
Yeah, that thing's not light.
No.
Hold on, I gotta get it under it. Okay.
File the rest in place.
With the last cut made, we moved it into place.
Probably tap it this way, 1/16 of an inch.
Give it a hip thrust.
Yeah. There you go. Cool, man.
Well, appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Huge help.
Wasn't too bad.
Lastly, I rounded over the outside corners and sanded it down before applying some oil to it.
Put in some leg screws from underneath to hold the worktop in place. I think I can fit in here. All right, I think the top's done. Really happy with how it turned out. It's just fir wood, which I know isn't the nicest, but it's gonna get beat up being the top of my workbench, and so I didn't want to use anything too nice. And I think the nice thing about this is that if it does get scratched and dinged, I can just take it off and resurface it and put some more oil on it, and it'd be like a new top again. Big thanks to Burbsy for giving me a hand. Really appreciate him coming out, and he had some good ideas. One thing he recommended was instead of notching the worktop, we can just cut into each of the studs a little bit to get slide back far enough, and then we won't see it once we put the walling on. So that saved a lot of time. It was a really good idea, and he did a great job notching out around the beams. So big thanks to him for giving me a hand there.